call the meeting to order. Welcome to meeting number 42 of the Standing Committee on Access to Information, Privacy and Ethics. Today's meeting is taking place in a hybrid format pursuant to the standing orders. Members are attending in person in the room and remotely using Zoom on the application. I see that we have Ms. Church on Zoom today. We're going to be dealing with some committee business today. I've got a couple of items to discuss. The first item, for the sake of the members, you'll recall that on Monday, April 20th, the committee adopted the following motion: that the committee undertake a study into the connection between the Minister of Finance, National Revenue, and ALTO, and the minister's claims that he's recused himself from decisions his government related to ALTO. That for the purpose of this study, the committee invite the following witnesses to appear during the week of May 25th, 2026, Conrad von Finkenstein, the Conflict of Interest and Ethics Commissioner, for 1 hour, and the Minister of Finance and National Revenue for 1 hour. Both the Conflict of Interest and Ethics Commissioner and the Minister were invited to appear this week. And while the Conflict of Interest and Ethics Commissioner and the Minister were invited, the Ethics Commissioner did confirm his appearance for this Thursday. Over several interactions with the Minister, we've got a response that he can only appear on June 11th. So that is contrary to the motion that was passed by the committee that both appear during the week of the May 25th. So I need to understand from the committee what direction you want us to take, want me to take. When I say us, the clerk and I see you, Mr. Barrett, in terms of where we're going to go with this. And so the question I put before the committee, despite the motion that was passed, shall we accept June 11th for the Minister, and shall the Ethics Commissioner be rescheduled on June 11th also? Because I think it was the intent of the committee, at least it was my understanding, the intent of the committee, that we were going to have both the Minister and the Ethics Commissioner appear during the same 2-hour period, one for 1 hour and the other for the other hour. Mr. Barrett, go ahead, followed by Mr. Cooper.
So the date that we arrived at to have the Minister appear wasn't something that was conjured up. It was on the advice of Liberal members, this date. And the committee passed the motion inviting the Minister to come. In the alternative to accepting that the Minister is not coming this week, there is no alternative. So the committee can't make the Minister come before committee. But the committee did pass that motion. And so it's a very unfortunate choice that the Minister made to have created the expectation with members of his party that he would be here, and then to inform the committee that he would not honor the obligation that he has. Now, is it an imperative, as in there are consequences should he not appear? No, that's not a power that committees have with respect to ministers. But I think that it is not a good sign. It's just not a good sign that we have a motion passed by the committee to deal with a matter about a conflict of interest, and we had designed a single meeting. And the date was all but prescribed by Liberal members, presumably on advice from the Minister's office. So the integrity of that plan should be retained as much as possible. Now, the date that was included in the motion passed by committee is not going to be honored. But the intent to have a single meeting, of course, should be respected, and we should put this together for a single meeting when it does occur. But this was a matter that generated an incredible amount of public interest, which is how it found itself in front of the committee for consideration, and was such that the committee members of the committee agreed to this, including Liberal members who who had the visibility via the minister's office to offer a date much farther into the future than the original motion intended, and that was a compromise at the time. So we're now being asked to compromise on our compromise, and it just cannot pass by us without mention, a silent shrug that we heard often in the week before the House adjourned. So 3 weeks ago, we heard the government House leader and many ministers say that that they respect committees, that committees are important, that committees are powerful, and that committees set their agenda. Well, here we have a standing committee, that said the minister must appear, and the minister's not appearing. So it's an affront to what we do. We don't have the teeth as committees to do more than to ask the minister to appear, and then once it passes, to ask that he come on another day. But it's not how this place is supposed to work, and it is, I don't think, consistent with what Canadians expect from their government and from ministers of the Crown, that when a standing committee asks that they appear, that and then they ask members of their party to arrange for a date that works for them, and then let other circumstances dictate a different set of actions beyond what the committee has agreed to. So it's something that shouldn't continue. The minister ought to know, and I believe he does know, that this is it's contrary to what his government has said, and it's contrary to the committee motion that was passed. And I'll just say one more time that the motion was for them to appear at the same time, and so on 1 hour panels. So unless we're blowing this whole motion up, to answer your second question, should the commissioner appear at this week or next, the intention was for them to come together, but we really shouldn't just be redesigning the motion in its entirety at this point.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Barrett. And just to address several points, obviously the obligation on our part, on my part, and the clerk's part was to advise the minister's office, which he was on several occasions, the office was, that the motion had indeed passed. We were under an indication that he would make himself available that week of May 25th. So the question before us, again, is June 11th. Do we reschedule? Should we reschedule? Should the clerk and I reschedule June 11th as the time for both the minister? He's indicated that he's available that day, and I think in all indications that the Conflict of Interest and Ethics Commissioner is available that day too. So that's the question before us. Mr. Cooper, your comments on that? And then Ms. Church after that.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have to say that I'm extremely disappointed, but to some extent hardly surprised that we see the minister bailing out on coming to committee. There are serious questions about a conflict of interest surrounding the minister in terms of his role in directing billions of tax dollars to the Alto project, notwithstanding that his partner is a vice president at Alto. Now, for 17 hours, Liberal MPs across the way filibustered a motion to bring the minister to committee to answer questions about this apparent conflict of interest. For 17 hours, they blocked and obstructed the work of this committee. They ran interference for the minister. That motion provided that the minister appear on May the 5th. After 17 hours of obstruction from the Liberals, they finally said he can come on May 25th. Now, when the Liberals said after 17 hours of obstruction that the minister could come on May 25th, the week of May 25th, we took them at face value that they had confirmed with the minister that indeed he was available during the week of May 25th. And now we suddenly find out that it's the week of May 25th that, oh no, the minister can't appear? He's too busy to come before a parliamentary committee to answer questions about an apparent conflict of interest involving billions of taxpayer dollars? To say, oh, well, he'll come on June 11th. How do we know he's going to come on June 11th? What is to say that the minister is going to come up with another excuse to say that he's too busy to come to committee? This is part of a game by these Liberals. A part of a game to obstruct committees, to shut down accountability. This is what they did, of course, when they filibustered. This is what they did when they brought forward their undemocratic motion to stack committees after the Prime Minister's part of a strategy picked off certain MPs to cross the floor in undemocratic floor crossings. We have one of those floor crossers who's on this committee who I guess is AWOL yet again. What a surprise. But,
Point of order?
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead.
Sorry, I know because Mr. Cooper is, I've missed serving alongside with him on committee, so I'm glad that we are back together again. He knows my enthusiasm, but I do believe the House rules would be echoed in the committee where we don't really talk about absence or presence of members.
Who's not here?
Well, whoever he was referring to that he's concerned about.
Thank you, Ms. Shager. I've taken your point, Mr. Cooper. Go ahead.
Mr. Chair, this is unacceptable. It's part of a pattern of delay. That's all it is. And let's not minimize the seriousness of the issue at hand, which is that the minister has a conflict, an apparent conflict in respect of Alto. It's not me who is asserting that he has a conflict, although I certainly assert that. The minister himself conceded that when he, after he got caught being involved in decisions related to Alto, said, well, he had set up an ethics screen. And then he said he acted proactively in setting up the ethics screen. Of course, he had never announced anything about the ethics screen. He never said anything about the ethics screen. No one knew about the ethics screen. But he said there was an ethics screen. And why was there an ethics screen? Because he said there was a conflict. And no wonder there was a conflict, because there is a conflict when you have a partner, his partner, who is a vice president at Alto. Now, the minister's spokesperson said in the National Post on April 6, 2026, quote, the minister fully respects the screen, meaning he is neither implicated in nor party to any discussions, decisions, or votes related to Alto, except for the fact that we know that that isn't true, because the minister introduced legislation related to Alto. He spoke on that legislation. He voted on that legislation. He included provision for funding for Alto in the budget, and he advanced the Alto project through a budget bill. So contrary to the minister's spokesperson's statement, the minister did in fact participate in discussions, decisions, and votes, all related to Alto, in which the minister has an apparent conflict of interest. And so it underscores why we need to hear from him, and now he has put this committee in a very difficult position. Yes, to some degree, what choice do we have, Mr. Chair, other than to take the minister at his word, but yes, he will finally appear on June 11th. It shouldn't have come to this. We should be hearing from the minister this week. But if he's not available, then being practical, what solution is there. But I just wish to underscore that it shouldn't have come to this. It's unacceptable that it has come to this, and it does appear to be part of a pattern by this government to avoid accountability.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Cooper. The question before us in the direction that the clerk and I need is, are we going to direct the Ethics Commissioner to appear on the same day that the Finance Minister, Mr. Champagne, has said that he can appear before the committee, notwithstanding the motion that he was to appear the week of May 25th? Ms. Church, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and welcome back to all my colleagues around the table after the 2-week parliamentary break. Pleasure to be back in Ethics Committee, and far be it from me to try to get in the way of some of the theatrical outrage that we're seeing on the other side at the moment. But I think that where I wanted to come from, Mr. Chair, was just to remind the table and to come back to the fact that when we did debate this motion, we did so in good faith, and that I think that it's entirely reasonable, and Canadians understand that from time to time there are business of state, international affairs that come into play, particularly with ministers of cabinet. I think that it's important for the record for this committee and for anyone watching that we also make sure that it's known widely that the Minister of Finance in this case is actually going to be appearing for 4 hours tomorrow night at Committee of the Whole in the House of Commons, a 4-hour appearance, which I think Mr. Chair is very significant. We know that between now and June 11th, he is appearing on 3 other committees, making appearances at those, including at the Finance Committee on a Conservative motion on June 4th. I raise this only to say that the minister is making every effort to be as accountable and transparent and available as one would expect a Minister of Finance to be, balancing, of course, the immense responsibilities that come with that role. So this is not intended to be an affront to anyone. This is not intended to thwart the good work of this committee. It is simply a recognition that from time to time, as the weeks and months pass, there are scheduling changes that we have to be able to deal with, and that although we believed to have had a date set out ahead of time and all offices had worked very effectively to land on that date, there's important matters of business and of state that are arising that we need to be able to adjust with. So again, I anticipate and encourage that all the members on this committee are going to be very active tomorrow in that Committee of the Whole with the Finance Minister, and we look forward to having him at the committee here in a couple of weeks to finish out that motion on Alto. And I think from my perspective, certainly, Mr. Chair, am not averse to having both appear together.
Okay, so thank you for that, Ms. Church. I'm sensing from the interventions that I'm hearing so far that there is a desire and direction on the part of the committee to have the Ethics Commissioner ask the Ethics Commissioner to appear June 11th, as well as the Finance Minister, because he's already indicated that he can. So I'm sensing that right now. If I'm wrong, tell me. Well, if I'm wrong, tell me. But we do have a couple of more people that want to discuss this and allow their opinions to be heard. So I'm going to go to Ms. Chagger. I'm trying to focus here. I hear some chatter on that side. So just keep it down, please.
Thank you.
Mr. Gord, go ahead. Monsieur Gord, allez s'il vous plaît sur la discussion.
Merci, Monsieur.
Thank you, Chair. The Minister has proposed the 11th of June. If the government can guarantee that the House will be sitting at that time, because there are rumors of the House rising on the 10th. So, would the committee still sit if the government decides to rise for the summer on the 10th of June, because we can choose to sit after that. I've seen governments rise earlier than originally planned. And if the House is to rise on the 10th, would the minister be safe until the fall, or would we be able to maintain June 11th with the minister and the commissioner, even if the House were to rise on the 10th? I'm going to respond in English, Mr. Gould.
At this point, I mean, the House is scheduled to rise on the 18th of June, is my understanding. 18th of June, so it could be 19th. So it's highly speculative. I am going to proceed on the basis that the House is going to rise on the 19th, and everything we do from this point forward will be on that basis. So, you know, if a decision is made between the parties that they're going to adjourn early, there's nothing that I can affect. So I'm going to proceed on that basis. So.
Oui, merci, Monsieur le Président. Je sais que vous êtes impuissant.
Thank you, Chair. I know that you have no influence on when the House rises, but committees can still sit during the summer. And so, if the House were to rise early, could the committee still decide to host its meeting on the 11th of June and to hear from the Ethics Commissioner and the Minister? People would still be here. I just want to be sure that if we accept to hear from the Minister on the 11th, and it's unfortunate that we've already delayed this, and of course we're dealing with rumors. This seems to be rumors week. There's the rumor of the 10th. So if we accept to hear from the Minister on the 11th, we need to ensure that the committee will be sitting. The committee can choose to sit even if the House is not sitting. So that is a possibility. Chances are that the House will rise on June 19th, as I stated. But if it happens before the 19th, as you mentioned, if it's to rise on the 10th, the committee can organize a meeting on the 11th if we decide today that we're going to be hearing from the Minister and the Commissioner on the 11th. Thank you, Chair. Mr. Alsuit.
Again, the question is on the Ethics Commissioner.
Thank you, Chair. A quick note, I've had the privilege of subbing in on many committees so far. I'm a permanent member on 3. And anyone who's seen him in action knows the minister has never exactly been shy to testify or to appear in committee in the past. And I mean, as Ms. Church said perfectly, the minister is going to be appearing on 3 committees in the span of 10 days, including a committee of the whole for 4 hours. So there's clearly no attempt at avoiding, at escaping accountability here. I'll also make a point of saying the members know this well. Things happen and life comes at us all from a variety of directions. But I will say I've been a member on this committee for slightly over a month now, and it feels that, admittedly, I've heard more rants turned into clips than I've had the privilege of partaking in actual business. Mm-hmm. There is nothing here that stops us from hearing from the witness that was initially planned, as initially planned, and to then hear from the minister when he is available. And I mean, frankly, I think of it in that context. I think that is what makes the most sense. So I put that out there, and I do hope that the committee will agree on that front.
Okay, thank you. So I'm getting the sense that the 11th of June is okay with members of the committee to have both the Ethics Commissioner and the Finance Minister come to committee, notwithstanding the motion of the week of 25th. Have I got?
What he said.
No. So what? Sorry, what are you saying?
Can I add myself to the list? Sure.
Yeah, hang on.
Thanks.
Just so I'm clarifying, like, so the idea is to have the Ethics Commissioner and
here for the 1 hour, and to then find something else to do for the other hour. My understanding is we have 2 draft reports. We have a variety of studies that we could otherwise do. I propose that we make use of the time that we have. It's just, this is important and valuable time.
So
we have
if,
work to
so-
do.
just for clarity, if the decision is the committee to include this on the 11th, right, then we can have the lobbying study done on Thursday as well.
I hear you.
So the hours, the 2 hours on Thursday will be filled.
Okay.
But the original intent of the committee, from what I understood, was to have the ethics commissioner and the finance minister appear at the same time. That's what we're trying to accommodate here. So I think we can reasonably do that on June 11th. At least the commissioner has indicated that he is available. The finance minister has said he's available on June 11th, and so so Thursday we will have a full agenda on Thursday. I promise you that. Okay. Ms. Chagger, go ahead, please.
That was the first time I heard clarification from the chair that the ethics commissioner has confirmed that he is available on June 11th. So I just would echo to say, let's maximize the time of this committee. I also am a new member, have not seen a lot of action on this committee, so I would just like to get some stuff done because I know it is a valuable committee. I know there's a lot of experience on the committee, so I think we should be productive, we should be effective, regardless of what the structure of the House is. I think committee members are masters of our own domain, so let's just get some work done. Let's serve our constituents, let's serve Canadians, and let's be productive. Thank you.
So thank you for that, Ms. Jagger. I just want to clarify again that the Ethics Commissioner has said that he could make himself available June 11th, if it was the will of the committee to have him come on the 11th. And I'm sensing that that's the will of the committee, correct? Wait, okay. Wait, Monsieur Fortin?
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Nous sommes...
Thank you, Chair. We agree with the proposal for June 11th. Our concern is to ensure that we have both on the same day. We want to hear from the Commissioner and the Minister on the same day. If not, we will not agree. We cannot... We have... Rather, the Minister has stated that he will be here on the 11th, but there's no way for us to confirm it for sure, but he has said it.
Vous avez dit que vous aviez tous les pouvoirs, Monsieur le Président. Je comptais sur vous.
I was counting on you, Chair.
So the clerk, do you want to say something, Mike? Yes, please. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, so just so we're clear, members opposite said that, we haven't got a lot of work done. They've been here for a month. Well, there have been extensive Liberal filibusters in that period of time, extensive, for closing in on 20 hours. So let's not be ahistorical in our comments. Like that's what happened, to the point where consideration of draft reports did not happen because of filibusters. So that's why we found ourselves in the position of not checking a bunch of things off of the list in that period of time. So not everyone coming to get work done, I think, was one of the other comments. I guess it depends on what our definition of that is. And on committees being the masters of our own domain, that is true insofar as the committees are respected by ministers. We can order people to appear, but we can't make a minister appear. And so that's why that was agreed to in good faith. And so we're proceeding with that, but it can't go without remarking on that that the powers of committee are being diminished when we're ignored. And the final thing I'll say is, in that month, not a lot of work and a lot of clips. I would encourage you to review my social media often. At Mike Barrett ON, you can take a look and see the clips that I've generated since your time on this committee, and how many include what's gone on here during that period of time. But follow, share, and like for more. But you're not going to find anything in that period of time where it was alleged that our interventions have been, or my interventions have been, for that purpose. We wanted the finance minister to come to talk about a matter of public interest. The minister agreed that he would come for this week, and he's now said that he's going to come a different week. Well, we will accept that, that we cannot control that. The minister said he would be here this week. We expected he would. He's not. The minister says he'll be here on the date that's been prescribed. We expect that he will.
Okay, so I'm going to end the discussion on that note. We have agreement from everyone that this will happen on June 11th. Both the Ethics Commissioner and the Finance Minister will appear. We'll make sure of that. Okay, so the second item that I have under committee business is how we left off. I forget the date, but we were dealing with a motion moved by Mr. Barrett on Thursday, April 23rd, 2026. It was May 4th. The clerk reminds me. I'm not going to read the entirety of the motion, but we were dealing with the sub-amendment and the wording on the sub-amendment that was moved by Mr. Barrett. There was to be discussion. Once the clerk clarified the sub-amendment, there was to be discussion among the parties, and I think the point people on this was Ms. Church and Mr. Barrett, I think the block was involved in that as well, that the amendment be amended by replacing the words by deleting in point A the words pursuant to the assessment tool on the application of the Prime Minister's conflicts of interest screen, including assessments originating in the PCO or any other department from the previous month, that these reports include 1, a summary of each instance where an assessment was triggered, 2, for the record of the outcome of each analysis, 3, any records of discussions or considerations that are in the possession of the PCO or any department related to each analysis, including notes and meeting minutes, and 4, any correspondence related to each analysis, including emails, text messages, instant messages, and other records of conversations, and that the first report shall be provided to the committee no later than June 15th, 2026, and shall include the complete set of information for each assessment since the Prime Minister's conflicts of interest screen came into effect. And the sub-amendment was with the following: by deleting in point A the words 3, any records of discussion or considerations that are in the possession of the PCO or any department related to each analysis, including notes and meeting minutes, and 4, any correspondence related to each analysis, including emails, text messages, instant messages, and other records of conversations, and that the first report shall be provided to the committee by no later than June 15, 2026, and shall include a complete set of information for each assessment since the Prime Minister's conflict of interest screen came into effect. And that is where we are resuming debate today on the sub-amendment moved by Mr. Barrett. As I said earlier, the clerk did clarify the language. That language was to be discussed. I'm assuming that that was, and so that's where we're at today. So, anything on the sub-amendment? I don't see any. Any discussion? So on the sub-amendment by Mr. Barrett, Madam Clerk, I'm going to call for the vote. And if you vote for or vote yay, you're voting in favor of the sub-amendment. If you vote nay, you're voting against the sub-amendment.
Mr. Alsoud. No. Ms. Tiger. Mr. Chang. No. Ms. Church.
Nay.
Madame Lapointe.
No.
Mr. Barrett.
Yes. C'est parce que ce matin,
Mr. Cooper.
la suite.
Monsieur Gourde.
Oui.
Monsieur Fortin.
Oui.
Yeas 4, nays 5.
Okay, so the sub-amendment is defeated. We are now on the amendment. I'm just going to just pause for a sec. I just have to ask the clerk something. Okay, so we are now on the amendment by Ms. Church, and that, if anybody needs me to read it, I will, but I don't think it's been in everybody's possession for almost a month now. So on the amendment by Ms. Church, any discussion on the amendment? Mr. Alsoud.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to move a motion that the motion be amended by replacing, and I quote, an assessment was undertaken relating to the application of the Prime Minister's conflict of interest screen pursuant to the assessment tool on the application of the Prime Minister's Conflict of Interest screen, including assessments originating in the PCO or any department from the previous months, that these reports include 1. A summary of each instance where an assessment was triggered, 2. The record of the outcome of each analysis, 3. Any records of discussions or considerations that are in the possession of the PCO or any department related to each analysis, including notes and meeting minutes, and 4. Any correspondence related to each analysis, including emails, text messages, instant messages, and any other records of conversations, and the first report shall be provided to the committee by no later than June 15, 2026, and shall include the complete set of information. I retract my statement, Chair. And I would like to move instead that we delete 2.
So just so that I'm clear, you were moving an amendment, or a sub-amendment.
Yeah. Just to delete 2.
To what? To like paragraph number 2? The entirety of the paragraph? Is that what you're looking to delete?
Okay.
Part 2 of the amendment, Chair.
So you're looking to delete the amendment effectively, correct?
Part 2 of it.
Part 2.
Part 2 of the amendment? Okay, we just need some clarification, Mr. El-Soud. I'm going to walk you through this here if you don't mind. So you're proposing, so Ms. Church has the amendment. You're proposing a sub-amendment that would include number 2, but anything past point number 2 is what you're proposing to delete, correct? So the...
We are removing effectively. I'm proposing that we remove the second part of the sub-amendment, 2 within the sub-amendment.
Point 2.
Yes,
Right,
that's
okay,
correct.
so point 1 will remain. So just so that I'm clear, so
Absolutely.
that everybody's clear, you're going to keep in, with your sub-amendment, you're going to keep in by deleting in point A the words pursuant to the assessment tool on the application of the Prime Minister's Conflict of Interest screen, including assessments originating in the PCO or any other department from the previous month, and that these reports include a summary of each, we don't even need part 1 there, a summary of each instance where an assessment was triggered. Am I understanding that correct? And then the entirety of point 2 is to be deleted in your sub-amendment, correct? Okay. And then we're still keeping point number 3, correct? Okay. So are members of the committee clear on where Mr. El-Soud has proposed a sub-amendment, and that is to, and it is in order, to remove everything after point 2 of paragraph 2, starting at the record and ending at came into effect. Is everybody clear on that? No? Okay, I'm going to suspend for a couple of minutes so everybody has some clarity here. So we were on a sub-amendment by Mr. Al-Sood, and after much discussion, I think everybody is of the understanding that the sub-amendment would actually change Ms. Church's amendment by deleting Section 2 of Ms. Church's amendment. It would also, it would not change anything to do with line 1, line 3, and line 4 of the motion. So,
As a matter of fact, I said 4. But there's no 4.
oh,
It's
sorry,
like
there's,
point
okay.
B, it's the new point.
Okay, okay. Sorry, it wasn't point 4, it was the,
It's the new B and the new C.
new B and the new C, sorry. That was, clerk and I were discussing that, and that's how it was. So anyways, any discussion on the sub-amendment by Mr. Al-Sood? That's where we're at. No discussion, okay? So we're Monsieur
Juste,
Fortin?
Monsieur le Président, est-ce que c'est possible de relire?
Chair, would it be possible to reread the motion as it would be if it were to be amended? I think that the clerk has both. You'll read it in English or in French?
Merci. Juste un moment, s'il vous plaît, Monsieur Fortin. Le gars, il va lire, okay?
The clerk is going to read it. Just for clarity's sake. Thank you, Chair. So in French, the motion would read as follows: that the committee, A, require the Privy Council Office, PCO, to provide the committee quarterly a report detailing each time an assessment was undertaken relating to the application of the Prime Minister's Conflict of Interest screen, pursuant to the assessment tool on the application of the Prime Minister's Conflict of Interest screen, including assessments originating in the PCO or any department, that these reports include a summary of each instance where an assessment was triggered, 2, the record of the outcome of each analysis, 3, any records of discussions or considerations that are in the possession of the PCO or any department related to each analysis, including notes and each analysis. 4, any correspondence related to each analysis, including emails, text messages, instant messages, and other records of conversation. That the first report be provided to the committee by no later than June 15, 2026, and shall include the complete set of information for each assessment since the Prime Minister's Conflict of Interest screen came into effect. And then we would add, post the reports publicly on the committee's website, and C, invite the Conflict of Interest and Ethics Commissioner every quarter to discuss the contents of the most recent quarterly report from PCO.
Merci, Monsieur Fortin et Madame.
Thank you, Mr. Fortin, and thank you, Madam Clerk.
Amendment as proposed by Mr. Al-Sood. Okay, I am going to ask for a vote on the sub-amendment. Madam Clerk, go ahead, please.
Donc, le sous-amendement proposé par M. Al-Sood. Monsieur Al-Sood.
Oui.
Ms. Tiger. Mr. Chang.
Oui.
Ms. Church. Yes.
Thumbs up.
Yay.
Yes, that's yes. Miss Lapointe. Madame Lapointe, excusez.
Oui.
Mr. Bratt.
Yes.
Mr. Cooper,
In favor?
Monsieur Gourde,
Oui.
Monsieur Fortin.
Oui.
Que des oui. Yes, 9.
Okay, so the sub-amendment carries. We are now on the amendment of the motion. Okay, do I see somebody's hand? No? Okay, so we are on the amendment now. Okay, Madam Clerk.
OK. Donc, l'amendement de Madame Church tel que modifié par
The amendment as amended by the sub-amendment.
Jagger. Mr. Chang. Miss Church.
Yes.
Madame Lapointe.
Oui.
Mr. Barrett.
Yay.
Mr. Cooper.
Yes.
Monsieur Gourde.
Oui.
Monsieur Fortin.
Oui.
He's 9.
Okay, thank you, Madam Clerk. So the amendment carries. We're now on the main motion. Ms. Chagger.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, I've sent it around. Can you please just share it with all members to make sure that they can have it in their language of preference?
Okay,
So we can all be reading out of the same.
Okay, so I appreciate being sent that prior to the intervention. It has been sent by the clerk in both official languages. And I expect that you're moving an amendment then, correct?
Yes, please.
All right, so this is an amendment to the main motion right now. Okay, go ahead, Ms. Chagger.
Main motion as amended, yes. Monsieur Fontaine, est-ce que vous avez le reçu?
Mr. Fortin, have you received it?
Nouvel amendement?
You just sent in a new amendment?
Oh, c'est là.
Je l'ai fait en
Ah,
papier.
OK, merci.
Okay.
Okay. So,
So-
Mr. Chair, that the motion be amended by replacing an assessment was undertaken relating to the application of the Prime Minister's Conflict of Interest screen pursuant to this assessment tool on the application of the Prime Minister's Conflict of Interest screen, including assessments originating in the PCO or any department from the previous month, that these reports include I, a summary of each instance where an assessment was triggered, II, this record of the outcome of each analysis, 3, any record of discussions or considerations that are in the possession of the PCO or any department related to each analysis, including notes and meeting minutes, and 4, any correspondence related to each analysis, including emails, text messages, instant messages, and other records of conversation, and that the first report shall be provided to the committee by no later than June 15, 2026, and shall include the complete set of information for each assessment since the Prime Minister's Conflict of Interest screen came into effect, and replacing it with the Prime Minister's Conflict of Interest screen has been applied. Given that the Conflict of Interest Commissioner has advised the Prime Minister against learning of when his screen has been applied until a decision has been finalized and made public, such decision shall be shared after this point, subject to any limitations or privileges that may apply, such as national security or cabinet confidence. 2, adding B, require the Privy Council Office, PCO, to provide the committee as necessary any updates to the assessment process for applying the Prime Minister's Conflict of Interest screen.
Thank you, Ms. Jagger. So we've got an amendment to the main motion. Everybody has a copy of it. I have some discussion. Mr. Barrett has put his name on the list. Go ahead, Mr. Barrett, please, on the amendment proposed by Ms. Jagger. Go ahead.
So the PCO, the clerk of the Privy Council, came to committee, and can I borrow this from you, Mr. Cooper? Pardon me. And he provided us with the assessment tool, and it's titled Prime Minister's Conflict of Interest Screen, and it it says that it's a maximum of 2 pages of analysis, that there's an overview. It prescribes that the summary is only 1 sentence, that the position on if the screen should apply is only 1 sentence, that why the screen applies is only 1 sentence, and then the facts that are to be included are it's not in and of itself information that should or ought to rise to the level of national security or non-public information. And I appreciate that whatever we adopt here should not create conditions where we would expect that PCO would release non-public information that would render the screen useless by publishing information that we're looking to screen, that they're looking to screen from being seen by the subject of the screen, in this case, the Prime Minister. So, like, I get that. We're not looking to work around the screen. We're not looking for information to be public when it could still be acted on or traded on or decisions could be taken because of it. Explain the Prime Minister's involvement. Does the decision or discussion involve direct engagement between any of the companies listed in Annex A, that's of the Prime Minister's screen, and the government? Are the interests of any one of the companies involved in the decision or discussion? And if so, in what way? And it goes on. And the second page of this tool, and it goes on. I won't read each one into the record. But then there's a decision page on the back. And the decision is, do you concur that the issue engages / does not engage the application of the Prime Minister's conflict of interest screen? Your decision is sought by click or tap to enter a date. For positive recommendations, we've applied the screen on a precautionary basis pending decisions. Yes, no, I need more information. And then there's 2 signature blocks, one for Mr. Sabia and one for Monsieur Blanchard, with yes, no, and I need more information. So we're looking for the 2 pages that the clerk of the Privy Council, one of the 2 people responsible for the Prime Minister's conflict of interest screen, he furnished that to the committee. And that's what we're looking for. So he was the one who made its existence known to us. And it's relevant. And that's why he told us, because it's relevant. And so what we've received since then is a letter from the Deputy Secretary to the Cabinet, and it details some of the circumstances and some of the information, but doesn't provide the level of granularity that would be of interest to the public. And I think it's important also to know when the screen has not been applied. And so we've pursued this issue and will continue to pursue this issue in a spirit of collaboration. Truly, I think that this has the potential to be a process that will provide transparency to Canadians about an issue that's in the public interest. There's tons of media coverage and online discussions about the appearance of conflicts of interest. Why did a meeting between the Prime Minister and this organization or this individual not trigger the screen? How did this action not trigger the screen? I think that at a time when we have an opportunity to improve public confidence, enhance public confidence in public office holders and our democratic institutions, to set us apart from other countries. We hear all the time people say, well, Canada has some of the strictest laws, or Canada has that doesn't mean you can't improve on it. And I think that we have the opportunity to do that. And it's not an indictment of anyone. It's transparency. And I think that would be beneficial in a lot of ways. We talk about access to information here. I won't get into a long departure from my core remarks. I'd like to conclude them. but we can do a lot better. I think everyone would agree, all members would agree, that access to information is a very frustrating process, even for parliamentarians, and definitely for members of the public, including the media. So we need to do better. We can improve on the systems, and this is an opportunity to do that. So what the motion has is it better than nothing? Yes, it is. But let's do better than that. I wonder if the reason why we're not seeing some of these things is because there's a reticence on the part of the PCO to provide that information to the committee. I have no interest in just talking in circles around it, and I don't think other members do either. I wonder if there would be an openness to having the individuals responsible, not for the officially responsible for the administration of the screen, in the Chief of Staff to the Prime Minister and the Clerk of the Privy Council come to talk about it again at this point. But perhaps we could have from PCO some folks come for an hour to tell us what we should be looking for. I think that they could directly inform the committee's work in a very helpful and positive way. And they could say, well, yeah, that's really interesting what you said, Mr. Barrett. However, in 100% of the instances, point 2, 3, and 4 would have to be redacted for the very same reason every time. Point 1 is the same every time. And so, in fact, the letter that we're providing to you could only be augmented by providing this piece of information. And if it's the committee's wishes, we'd be happy to do that. I imagine that if we asked them to come before us, that in advance that they would undertake to put forward the most information that they're prepared to offer. We understand the dynamics of the makeup of the committee. The Liberal members have a majority. I get that. But I also think that well-intentioned members around the table could look to build something that is durable and will survive. And we've heard that the reason that Mr. Carney has this screen in place is because he brings with him an experience that has created the conditions necessary for this. And certainly Liberal members have said that that's exactly the kind of conditions from which a prime minister should come from. Well, then I would expect that we would want this tool or this mechanism to be durable to survive after this parliament. No one, one of the great things about this country is we have elections, and people choose to run in them and not to run in them. But if you look historically, no one's around forever. We've had more than a couple prime ministers, and so we'll have another one after Mr. Carney. And this tool, this reporting mechanism, should survive the next election and the election after that, and it should only seek to create more transparency for the public, reduce the number of questions that members of the public have about how is it that they can go on and have that meeting. For the same reason that we have the regime with the ethics commissioner, with our disclosures, the same reason that we have the Lobbying Act, those weren't only necessary under the government in which they were created, and in fact they continued thereafter, but we haven't improved on them in a meaningful way. That's why we're reviewing the Lobbying Act. That's why we reviewed the Conflict of Interest Act, and that's why I think that we are we're the drafters of this new tool, and we have the opportunity to do our best to get it right. Who better to inform us on that instead of any of us or all of us getting it secondhand than to have not the clerk of the Privy Council themselves come back, but to have someone from their team who is an expert on this and who could articulate why it is some things would make sense and why they wouldn't make sense. And then the committee could undertake to do that. For members' consideration, I offer that, and that concludes my remarks. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Barrett. Excuse me, Mr. Cooper, I have you next, followed by Ms. Church. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. On the amendment, I speak in opposition to the amendment because, quite frankly, what it does is it guts accountability. It guts transparency. We have the most conflicted Prime Minister in Canadian history. More than 500 conflicts, 100 free conflicts related to Brookfield, of course, in which the Prime Minister has stock options in, which he stands to make tens of millions of dollars from, as well as future bonus pay, again, in which he stands to make tens of millions of dollars from. And we had, in the fall, the clerk of the Privy Council and the Prime Minister's Chief of Staff come before this committee when we had questions about how the so-called ethics screen that the Prime Minister holds up as the gold standard to say that with this ethics screen in place, in the face of 500 conflicts of interest, including 100 pre-related to Brookfield, that all is well, that decisions that relate to Brookfield are not being put in front of him on his desk, but he is recusing himself because of this so-called robust screen. The clerk of the Privy Council, in order to demonstrate the supposed robustness and, frankly, to suggest that there was some level of transparency involving how the screen was applied in terms of documentation as to the screen, came to us and said, well, we have this assessment tool that any time there's something flagged wherein the Prime Minister might have a potential conflict of interest, there's an assessment process. And there are very specific questions that are considered, and that once the process is triggered, that there is a 2-page analysis that is done, or a maximum 2-page analysis that documents the issue that had been flagged, the analysis that had been undertaken in respect of the flag in relation to a potential conflict involving the Prime Minister, and then a final sign-off by the two persons responsible for administering the ethics screen, the Prime Minister's Chief of Staff and the Clerk of the Privy Council, who tick off, yes, the screen should be applied, or no, the screen shouldn't be applied, or the third option, I need more information, go back to the drawing board. That is what the clerk and the Prime Minister's Chief of Staff have told us is being documented every time that a potential issue, a potential conflict is flagged. Now, what we have with this amendment, when I said it guts transparency, it guts accountability, is that we will only learn the times that the screen has been invoked. As Mr. Barrett said, yes, that's better than nothing. We'd like to know when the ethics screen has been invoked, but equally relevant is to know the times in which the ethics screen has not been invoked when a question of a potential conflict of interest involving the Prime Minister has been flagged. That is critical in order to understand how the screen is working, if it is working as it should be, and if, in fact, decisions involving potential conflicts of interest are being properly captured so that they are not put on the Prime Minister's desk, but he's not privy to them. And so, from a standpoint of transparency, when the Prime Minister's office says, well, rest assured, we're documenting these instances, there are records, but what good is a record if no one can see the records? What Prime Minister, what is being offered with this amendment is that we only see some of the records, but we don't see other records that arguably are as material, if not more material. Because I'd like to know any time that an issue has been flagged, so the process, therefore invoking the process, why ultimately the decision was made as to the screen not being invoked. So we need to see both. And with this amendment, we only see the positive decisions, but not the decisions where actually the green light is given to the Prime Minister to be involved on matters that could relate to Brookfield, could relate to other interests that he has. And so I think so on that basis, this amendment is problematic. And at the very least, I'd like some better understanding as to what the basis is, what the rationale is for not including records where a conflict, a potential conflict has been flagged, but a decision has been made to not invoke the screen. Why is that information? Why should this committee? What is problematic about presenting that information to this committee? Why is the Prime Minister's office hiding those outcomes from Canadians? What is it that they don't want to show? I'd like some explanation at the very least. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Cooper. Next, I have Ms. Church on the amendment. Go ahead, Ms. Church.
Sure. Mr. Chair, I'll be brief because I take my colleagues' comments to heart and under consideration. But I do think that actually this motion that we have amended or that we're proposing does meet some of the tests that my colleagues across the way have set out. I think that the process that we have in place right now, the letters that we've received from the Deputy Secretary to Cabinet, the quarterly letters that we are receiving that are detailing the situations where a screen is applied and that are following up in the course of those letters with additional information as it is able to be disclosed about decisions that are being made in government at an appropriate time. This is an exercise in transparency and accountability, I think, that we haven't seen before. And this is a move in the right direction. I am heartened that during the parliamentary break, we received the latest of the letters from the Deputy Secretary to Cabinet detailing situations that have arisen since February, outlining the details around two of those situations where those details can be made public at this time, and noting importantly that there are additional situations still under considerations and or not yet public, which presumably we will be provided with details on in due course. The letter finishes by setting out that the next quarterly report will be by August 15th. And so, Mr. Chair, I think the process that we've set out here is actually a good one to keep this committee informed on an ongoing basis, and particularly with the portion of this amendment that requires the Privy Council Office to provide the committee as necessary any updates to the assessment process for applying the Prime Minister's conflict of interest screen. I think that actually was a nod to what my colleagues across the table are suggesting, that we ensure that this committee is informed on a continual basis of the process, and through both PCO and by requiring the conflict of interest and ethics commissioner to be able to be invited to committee every quarter following one of these reports, that this actually gives an opportunity for this committee to quite transparently consider some of the situations that committee members might be interested in. So, Mr. Chair, I won't belabor this, but just by saying that I think that what we've come to here is actually a very good development in terms of the conversation that we've been having on this for some time now, since last fall, about the process that's underway, with a good rhythm, a good sense of the timeframes with which we can expect new information. We have had a PCO that has been responsive in terms of giving us information according to the schedule that we've set out to date. So this motion goes just that one step further, suggesting that we can engage PCO as needed, that we are going to post reports publicly on the committee's website, and that we are going to invite the commissioner as need be following these reports. I think that this is a good development, Mr. Chair, and would like to see it move forward.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Church. I'm going to go back to Mr. Barrett on the amendment. Mr. Barrett.
Amendment or motion as amended?
We're currently on the amendment as proposed by Ms. Chagger.
And, oh, right, the emailed version, yeah. So I'd like to move a sub-amendment then, and that is in part one, following the words has been applied, would add or not applied following an assessment.
So it would read then that the Prime Minister's conflict of interest screen has been applied, and you're adding or not applied following an assessment. Am I reading that right? Am I
Yes.
hearing that right? Okay. All right. Okay, so Mr. Barrett proposes a sub-amendment. It is in order, and that sub-amendment would read, the Prime Minister's the Prime Minister's conflict of interest screen has been applied or not. He's adding the words or not applied following an assessment, or not applied following an assessment, given that the conflict of interest commissioner, and it continues on beyond that. So, correct, Mr. Barrett?
Correct.
Okay. On the sub-amendment. Mr. Barrett, go ahead.
So I spoke, and I think Mr. Cooper as well, touched on why, when the decision hasn't been made to apply the screen, is of interest and is also not injurious to the government. I guess one of my questions I would have for Liberal members is, why not? Right. And if the answer is, well, there's information in there. Well, what kind of information? Like that's not what's that's what's very unclear to me is what information they're not prepared to release to the public. I get the part about non-public information that could be used to take an action that would defeat the screen. I get that. That's not what we're looking for. We understand that redactions need to be made for national security, for questions of cabinet confidence. We get that. But what is it in that tool that when it isn't used, and to be clear, the sub-amendment doesn't prescribe a change beyond what Ms. Chagger has proposed, and so it's only the breadth of the information that they're currently prepared to provide, but it's also as important to know when it wasn't used, and for the same reason that I said before, and that's that when the Prime Minister takes a meeting, when something ends up or is on its way to his desk, why did that not trigger the screen? And there are people who are taking those, making those decisions. The tool is being used. It's not the generation of new work, so there's no new activity that PCO would need to do. But is there a practical reason? And I'm asking that question, Chair, to any of the Liberal members. why not?
Exactly.
And if there is a reason why, because as I've just said, there are several reasons why certain pieces of information can't and won't be released, and I concede that. Oh, okay. But help us understand, help Canadians understand why this information can't be released to the public when the screen isn't used. Is it because in 99% of the cases it would reveal something that's injurious to the security of our country? Well, I would hope that they wouldn't that they wouldn't publish it on a website. Is it that it would provide insight into decisions or considerations that Cabinet is currently pursuing? Okay, that speaks to Cabinet confidence. That's not going to be released. And if they don't have the answer, then perhaps bring us someone who does have the answer, or let's invite someone who has the answer. I'm willing to put water in my wine, and I don't believe that it will just end up being water at the end, because as Miss Church said, this is a new thing. This is a new process in transparency, and I think that's good. But let's do everything we can to get it right. And if there's a reason why the information can't be included, then just let us know. And if PCO isn't the right people to have explain it to us, and I think that they probably are, we'll say so. But let's get this right the first time. And let's include those elements of when the screen hasn't been invoked. Let's find out why not, and that would again do so much for public confidence, because there are many a chart and many a graph and many an explainer about why there are conflicts and why those conflicts persist. Well, where that's correct, that will be borne out, and where it's not correct, that will be dispelled. So let's get the information, and we can. Sometimes Canadians will be able to make their own decision, but it also gives, I think, a pretty powerful tool for the government to be able to explain to Canadians why they've avoided a conflict of interest successfully through the use of this screen, and it's to everyone's advantage. So I think that it's fair. It's 4 words. And let's. It's 6 because I said after the assessment's been used. So it's not a math test. Let's get to yes on something that I think does what everyone's looking to have it do.
Mr. Barrett, got Mr. Cooper and Ms. Church on the sub-amendment proposed by Mr. Barrett to get us to yes. Go ahead, Mr. Cooper.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair, and I speak in support of the sub-amendment. If this ethics screen is working, as the Prime Minister and his officials claim that it is, as Liberals on this committee claim that it is, then show us the proof. Show us the evidence that it is working. We know that this is a Prime Minister who has actually been less than transparent about his conflicts. We have a Prime Minister who has a pattern of repeatedly defying the instruction of the Ethics Commissioner to stay away from Brookfield. So, in light of that, I have some hesitation in just accepting the assertion that everything is above board and that everything is working well. Hence, show us. Show us the receipts. Show us the records that are relevant. I mean, this is a prime minister who we know 2 days after the federal election met with an executive from a Brookfield-owned company that was subject to the ethics screen. He didn't disclose that. We only found out about it because the individual who met with him reported it pursuant to the Lobbying Act. This is a prime minister who met with the CEO of Brookfield Infrastructure on May 6 in Washington, D.C. This is a prime minister who sat down with the chief operating officer of Brookfield in the prime minister's office alone in October. The prime minister didn't say anything about that until the COO came before this committee and admitted that he met with the prime minister, or told this committee that he had met with the prime minister. This is a prime minister who's met with those connected to Brookfield in New York City, in London. There's all sorts of instances where money is going out the door, benefiting Brookfield. And so all of this is to say that, number one, the prime minister has massive conflicts. Secondly, the prime minister has been less than transparent. And thirdly, Brookfield has been a significant beneficiary of money that is going out the door from this government. All of which is to say that in the face of the most conflicted prime minister in Canadian history, we have 500 conflicts of interest. Oh, and by the way, 1,900 potential conflicts involving Brookfield that he didn't disclose to the ethics commissioner, that one could be forgiven for not just accepting that, the ethics screen is working, and we'll just show you the handful of times that it's been triggered, but we're not going to show you all of the other times that red flags have been raised and a decision was made to not invoke it by who? Who makes the decision? Well, none other than the clerk of the Privy Council, who the Prime Minister appointed, who answers to the Prime Minister, who serves at the pleasure of the Prime Minister, and the Prime Minister's Chief of Staff, who, of course, answers to the Prime Minister, both of whom are arguably in conflicts of interest with respect to the ethics screen. So I'm going to be less generous than Mr. Barrett has been in saying that this ethics screen is hardly a model. It's hardly the gold standard of what to do, but it is the tool that the Prime Minister has put in place. And now we're simply asking for full transparency. And if it in fact is working as the Liberals claim that it is, then I would think that they would have no hesitation in supporting this sub-amendment. Now, I said at the conclusion of my previous remarks that at the very least, I'd like some explanation as to what the opposition of the Liberals is, well, their opposition to showing us the records when the decision was made not to trigger the ethics screen. Why do they, what is problematic about providing that information? Why not? Why only be transparent when the screen has been triggered, but not transparent when it hasn't been triggered, but a threshold had been met, that a process had been set in place that required an inquiry,
right,
and analysis?
Right.
Is it because the screen is being applied in a less than rigorous way? Is it because the Prime Minister, in fact, is involved in a lot of decisions involving these 103 companies in one way or another? 103 companies that are Brookfield related, or other companies that are captured in the ethics screen, 500, Again, most conflicted prime minister in Canadian history. I'm looking for an explanation. There hasn't been an explanation. All I heard from the submissions of Ms. Church was that this is a step towards transparency, but this is a step in the right direction. Well, I agree it's a step in the right direction insofar as getting some of the information, but it's incomplete, and it's incomplete in a material way in order to understand the degree to which the ethics screen is working as the Prime Minister and his officials would purport it to be working in an effective way. Maybe it is. I have, again, very serious doubts given the track record of the Prime Minister on matters of Brookfield. But I say I'm still waiting for some explanation as to what it is, what they don't want us to see. Why? It certainly can't be because it's unwieldy. Back in the fall, we were told by Mr. Sabia that the screen had been triggered on 14 occasions. In 7 of the 14 occasions, a decision was made not to invoke the screen, and on 6 occasions, or I guess 13 times, six occasions, it had been. So 13 times, 7 times it wasn't invoked, 6 times it was invoked. Based upon the letter that we recently received, it's now been 17 times that it has been triggered. Presumably, there'd be, I don't know, 15, 16, 17, 20 times that it hasn't been triggered if you just base it on the ratio that we saw previously. We're talking about a document that is 2 pages. No more than 2 pages. Analysis, max 2 pages. Why can't we see those records? I'd like to know. I'd like an answer to that. Better yet, I would just invite the Liberals to back the sub-amendment, but at very least provide some explanation as to what the holdup here, what the problem is here, because I really can't understand what it is. What it seems to me, without any further explanation, is that it is a way to avoid transparency, a way to avoid accountability, and a way to hide instances where the Prime Minister may be involved in decisions where he does in fact have a conflict of interest, or what could very well be perceived to be a conflict of interest. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Cooper. Ms. Church on Mr. Barrett's sub-amendment. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, I'm not going to address Mr. Cooper's exaggerations and insinuations, but I have to call them out. I think what we are risking here, and this is, partly where I think our view on this amendment comes, is that this is really pushing towards a scavenger hunt, that members of this committee asked for transparency. They asked for the Privy Council to provide us with periodic reporting on when the screen was applied. We have that in our possession, Mr. Chair. And, with great respect to Mr. Barrett's comments that he would like to know how the Prime Minister avoided a conflict of interest, it's actually that there isn't a conflict of interest when the screen is not applied. So what members are asking for here with this amendment is to do something that nowhere else in the conflict of interest regime do we do, which is a declaration of when there isn't a conflict arising. Mr. Chair, that doesn't mean that there are no avenues for the opposition to explore where there could be, where they may have questions. The commissioner's office is built to handle this. But what they are asking for is really, call it a fishing expedition, call it a scavenger hunt. They're asking for an unworkable arrangement in asking for instances of where there isn't a screen applied. What we have is a workable solution right now, where when the screen is applied, we have disclosure and we have transparency.
Hang on, Ms. Church. On un appel de règlement.
We have a point of order. Ms. Church, we can hardly hear her. Her microphone is too high.
Better, Miss. Merci pour ça, Monsieur Fortin.
Thank you for flagging that, Mr. Fortin.
Ms. Church, I think it should be a little bit better now. Go ahead.
Is that better, Mr. Chair? Members?
Non, c'est pas un problème pour les interprètes, c'est un problème dans
It was
la
not a
chambre.
problem for the interpreters. It was an issue here in the room.
Going, Ms. Church. If it's a problem, we'll stop you. But it sounds better.
Well, look, I would just say this, that we do have an ethics commissioner's office. Those resources are available to this committee. We have asked for, and PCO has delivered, transparent periodic reporting of when a screen is applied, but when it is not applied, it's not that you've avoided a conflict, it's that there isn't a conflict. And if any member has issues with any of that, they are welcome to engage the conflict of interest commissioner on situations, which then that person has all information and an ability to weigh in with any parliamentarian. So, Mr. Chair, I just think that we have to be somewhat reasonable here in terms of what we are asking for. And that really requires setting an objective bar, which is the application of the screen. When the screen is applied, it is transparently reported. It is provided to this committee. This committee has a chance to review that. This committee has a chance to bring in PCO, to bring in the ethics commissioner, to ask questions about it, to have that fulsome consideration of instances where a screen is applied. But to do the reverse, which is to ask for an accounting of when the screen is not applied, doesn't make sense and is outside of what I would think is the workability of the regime as a whole, and certainly the precedent of how that regime has worked to date across Parliament, across the executive.
Ms. Church, we go to Mr. Cooper, followed by Mr. Barrett after that. Go ahead, Mr. Cooper.
Well, Ms. Church, through you, Mr. Chair, she was going to call out insinuations that I was making. Well, what is she? Is she denying that the Prime Minister is the most conflicted Prime Minister in Canadian history? Is she denying that he has 100 conflicts of interest related to Brookfield? Is she denying that the Ethics Commissioner told the Prime Minister to stay the heck away from Brookfield, and the Prime Minister proceeded to do the opposite? Is she denying the fact that Brookfield is a beneficiary of a lot of money that has been rolled out by this government? I would hope that she's not denying those very well-established facts. And with respect to what she claims is unwieldy, what is unwieldy about showing us 2 pages? What's so unwieldy about that? Evidently, it's not unwieldy to show us the 2 pages when the ethics screen has been triggered, but when somehow a decision was made by the Chief of Staff and the Clerk of Privy Council not to issue the screen on a matter that there is a issue, a red flag, a potential conflict, that is material. And it's not a fishing expedition, hardly a fishing expedition. These are on decisions where enough questions were raised about a potential conflict that it required an analysis, in which ultimately the Prime Minister's Chief of Staff and Clerk of Privy Council check off yes, no, or I need more information. So why is it we can only see the times that they say yes, but not the times that they say no? If she wants to respond to that question, I'd be interested in what the response is. To say that, oh, well, there's the Office of the Ethics Commissioner. If we have questions of the Ethics Commissioner, we can find out. Oh, yeah, sure, by leaving us in the dark about decisions that are made. How can we ask questions about decisions that we don't know were made? So much for transparency, so much for accountability, so much for saying, no worries, he's the most conflicted prime minister in Canadian history, but we've got this ethics screen, and by the way, we're recording it, we're keeping records of it, but you can't see the records, you can't see the decisions that are being made. Effectively, go to hell. That's the position that Ms. Church has just asserted. Go to hell when it comes to transparency.
Point of privilege, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead, Ms. Church.
Mr. Chair, I think that is quite borderline unparliamentary of my colleague across the way to be suggesting that and putting those denials on the table in that manner.
We're having an emotional debate. I would suggest, Mr. Cooper, that you use better language, if you don't mind, please. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that. Effectively, what Ms. Church is saying is forget about accountability, forget about transparency. And again, I just go back to my initial point that we're now well into this debate. The arguments have been put as to why these records are material. I think it's by any objective standard that cannot be in dispute. But what we have not had from the Liberals who seem to oppose this is any explanation why, other than convenient excuses to say, well, we've got this ethics commissioner, but of course, what questions can you ask of the ethics commissioner when you don't know what decisions were made or not made in respect to the ethics screen, and that it's unwieldy, but yet we know there were, in October, only 7 instances where the ethics screen was not invoked. So how can that be unwieldy? It isn't unwieldy.
Right.
So again, I think in the face of what we're hearing and in the face of what we know with respect to how this process works, that the inference that can be drawn is that the Prime Minister's office just doesn't want Canadians to know about how the ethics screen is being applied. They want to be very selective, shedding some light, but on when it arguably is even more material, which is when issues have been flagged, but a decision is made that, okay, actually the Prime Minister can be involved. He can go ahead, he can be involved in decision making, even though there were flags raised. That sounds pretty material. I think most Canadians would like to know when that is happening, how often it is happening, what it is pertaining to, and what the rationale was for giving the Prime Minister the green light. But what Ms. Church is saying is that the Liberals are going to give this committee the red light in terms of not being able to access those records. So, Mr. Chair, I think this is critical. This sub-amendment is critical to the substance of this motion.
Hear, hear.
Yet, if we don't have the records when a decision was made that the ethics screen not be applied, it is absolutely impossible to determine if, in fact, it is being applied in a vigorous and consistent manner in which the Prime Minister is avoiding conflicts of interest, again in the face of what is an unprecedented situation, namely a Prime Minister who is the most conflicted prime minister in Canadian history who stands to make tens of millions of dollars from Brookfield.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Cooper. Before I go to Mr. Barrett, just want to advise the committee that we did receive confirmation from the Ethics Commissioner that he is definitely available June 11th, and members of his team will be here as well. So the hope is that the Finance Minister makes himself available. I'm going to adjourn the meeting. We will resume this debate on Thursday.